But getting back on this, let's check out DePaul University's night scene. We're here on Armitage Avenue, heading eastbound towards the lake, and a TurboTax office. That's awesome. I need to walk into a TurboTax office. That's awesome. H&R Block went online, but they have offices. Now TurboTax is going from online and having offices. It makes perfect sense. So they want to build deeper relationships with their clients. They're still using the online software, but the professional is doing it. So you get a higher customization. So anyways, we're here by Kincaid's, and basically where people from DePaul hang out. So I don't know what the crowd is. I would assume that's obviously upperclassmen. You have to be 21. So juniors and seniors and graduate students. Yeah, I like girls in hot pants. That's when they show a little bit of the butt cheek. They call them hot pants. So summer's coming. So spring fashion is coming. So right now is the best time to have a spring fashion show. You know, you can have a fashion show before each season. You know that? Informing people of the trend and so on. Like Akira can have a spring fashion show now and promote spring fashion, and then have your winter final sales and everything for your winter inventory to save on certain items to use next year, purchase next year at a discount. And each season, before the season starts, you would have a fashion show and educating people, and you bring them in, and also you make them aware it's a good time to buy your winter fashion. The store I just turned by is a staple of this neighborhood on Halstead, but this is Cafe Barbariba. That's a Melman's property, and I like Cafe Barbariba. It's a tapas, Spanish tapas. Why can't we get Mexican tapas? Japanese? Do you know Japanese food is tapas food? It's small portions. Sushi is tapas. You get a variety of different types of sushi, just little pieces. It's a tapas. Or you get dim sum. It's more tapas. You're ordering small amounts and it's a tapas. So it's like Spanish tapas, dim sum and sushi. So similar, small portions, and you get to try different types of stuff. And that's another reason why sushi is so popular. And I do like hand rolls a lot, but I haven't had them in a while. Spicy tuna hand roll and all that. I do like hand rolls. And you hold them in your hand. They take the sushi and they make a snow cone out of it. You know that? They take the sushi, and hand rolls are great for street food. And if you're doing a fest and you're a sushi restaurant, you can offer everything as a hand roll. And you can have bigger and smaller hand rolls. Like you can make a hand roll, and the sushi place can have a kids menu with a small hand roll. Not the big hand roll for adults, but a small hand roll for kids. And they can have certain things that are considered safe for children. So there's certain seafood in that would be considered safe. But I'm up here by DePaul University, and I should go up Lincoln Avenue back here. So I'll go down Lincoln to the left and then turn back around and head up southeast. But it used to be a lot of stuff to the right, and a lot of stuff to the left on Lincoln, but it all changed. And so around the campus here, really just to the right is where most everything happens, and to the left, it's more tame now. It's not like it used to be. There used to be a lot more bars and restaurants and so on. And one of my fellow employees, Greg, while he worked at Platinum Wealth Solutions in the early days, he used to bartend at a place over here. And I went and saw him while he was bartending one time. But this area used to be a lot more, entertainment friendly, evening entertainment. But now it's quieter. So not as much activity. So it tells you what's going around the university. The population around here. And so I'm going to go down the side street, getting tailgated by a piece of garbage. So we'll turn down the alley and do a 3-point turn. So, again, and if you're saying, oh, what you can say and everything else, well, anger, God understands. And you say things because you're angered and you express yourself. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to carry through on an action, but you're letting off hot air, getting it off your chest, and not being passive aggressive. Meaning saying nothing, biting your lip, and you're all of a sudden one day you explode. So one way is venting. Expressing your disapproval. And with that, people have backlash, but when they're in the wrong, people get defensive, but again, you're in the wrong. And then other people try to cover it up, like the drunken driver hit me on the highway. He repeatedly said to me, I didn't run into you. And I said, did you come out of that SUV over there? Yes. I'm like, that SUV ran into us. And you were driving that SUV. Yeah. I drive that, but I didn't hit you. Okay, so was it a self-driving car and you were just a passenger in it? Because then that means you have to sue whoever, Tesla or whatever, that the self-driving mechanism. And this is going to be an interesting law, because if it's a self-driving car and you're drunk behind the wheel, can you really get a DUI? Because you're technically not driving. The car's doing the driving, not you. And if it's fully autonomous, you can't get a DUI if you're drunk. If it's fully autonomous, you're not driving. So you don't have liability, right? And we have to say, so do you have liability if it's fully autonomous, or don't you have liability? So that means I can get into my car, put it in fully autonomous mode, be totally drunk, and not be liable for anything that happens because it's fully autonomous. The manufacturer is liable. Remember this, and the manufacturer is always liable as long as you keep the software and that up to date. The manufacturer is fully liable. It's a transfer of risk. No longer has the driver have any liability then, and the manufacturer now has to create reserves for future lawsuits because they're always fully liable. So this is a whole new liability spectrum for car companies. And if you get the car modified, then the company that modifies it into self-driving, they're always liable. And the liability doesn't come off the books. So you have to set aside reserves that are permanently put into a conservative investment and have to sit there for the potential liability. That means you have to make more profit on your self-driving car. You have to charge a higher price. But again, this is the DePaul area, and this is the remaining strip of late night entertainment, really, where you have a bunch of places together, but this is DePaul's last hurrah. So this is the only area that's right by DePaul that has a bunch of late night places close to each other, because the other side of Lincoln, other side of Lincoln and Halstead, going north, there's nothing there. There's a couple restaurants, but no places like these. So this is literally the last hurrah around DePaul. You have the store and Kincaid's, but they're far apart. This is the only strip of entertainment. And they used to have a place here that did silly string, which was awesome. I loved going into. But again, this is part of campus life at DePaul University. This is where students interact socially. But there's no movie theater around here. So where the University of Arizona had an on-campus movie theater, and then when they rebuilt the student union, the movie theater moved on Park, and the movie theater's by Park and University. But there's no movie theater here by DePaul. There's one up on Sheffield, but that's a very small place, and it's a little bit further away. But this is the main strip for DePaul University. And this is a big city. And DePaul's a big university looking to expand. And another university, Illinois Institute of Technology, IIT, they don't even have any of this. So down State Street, where they have Motorola, down that street where they have Motorola, that's a little bit up, Illinois Institute of Technology, maybe they work with Comiskey Park and the White Sox to build what I just saw there. And let's go back around. But really, you're looking at creating a campus life. And the reason that dirtbags at the University of Arizona and the wheel at the University of Kansas is they're right on campus. Dirtbag's biggest competitive edge is it's on campus at the University of Arizona. Literally, it's on campus. It's right next to the fraternity houses. It's right on campus. And so the bar being right on campus, Dirtbags, has a competitive edge to all its rivals because it's right on campus. It's incredibly convenient. The wheel at the University of Kansas has a competitive edge, and it's always busy because it's right on campus. And it's right by the football stadium. And Dirtbags is right down the street from the football and basketball stadium. So before people go to games, they go to Dirtbags, and after they leave a basketball game or football game, they go back to Dirtbags. Why? Because it's right on campus. It's the same thing for the Wheel. People go to the Wheel before basketball or football games at Kansas University, and after the game, they go back to the Wheel because it's right on campus. But DePaul University has a big disconnect. Its stadiums aren't on campus, where the University of Arizona and Kansas, the stadiums are right on campus. This is a different type of campus life. Wintrust is all the way down in the South Loop, the DePaul basketball stadium, way away from the university, creating an experience that is not the same, a very big disconnect. So you don't have as rich college life. Truly, college life is much more robust at the University of Arizona, University of Campus. They have to figure out how they're going to bridge the gap at the DePaul University. They don't have a major football program. They don't have a medical school. And this is the problem with Loyola. Their medical school is in Maywood. Their campus is in Evanston, basically. Or Rogers Park, I should say, before Evanston. But it's in Rogers Park, and their medical school is in Maywood. It creates a big disconnect. Even Northwestern University, its medical school, law school, a good portion of graduate school is downtown. Now, the Gleacher Center is adult education, and it's graduate and adult. And so, but University of Chicago, it's right there. And the University of Chicago needs to build new stadiums. Their football and their basketball stadiums can be used for multiple sports. University of Chicago needs new stadiums. It's on campus. University of Chicago can have an awesome campus life, but again, they don't have this. By Hyde Park, you miss this, and they're trying to build this out, this kind of atmosphere, so we can get a better undergraduate experience, kind of. So, the first 2 years you can't, but the junior and senior year, you're involved in all this. So the upperclassmen have a much more robust off-campus life. It leads to greater socialization and everything else. It's part of their maturation. So, again, DePaul University net, and if you're the president of it, or Loyola, you have to understand your shortcomings, and you have to figure out how you're going to bridge the gap. That's like IIT, Illinois Institute of Technology, or UIC, University of Illinois Chicago. They have that little area on Halstead they built that added to a more robust campus life. But again, you end up being more of a commuter school because you don't have the on-campus football, basketball stadium. You don't have the rich campus life around the university. And so it makes it more of a commuter than a rich on-campus experience. So the student body, the alumni, is much more disconnected. The alumni at schools like the University of Arizona, where you have so many on campus and people don't commute, meaning truly they live around the university, the sporting events are all on campus and that, the fraternities and sororities are all right around campus, and it creates for this very connective system where you make extensive, deep friendships. Here, it's a very disjointed environment. And so, with this, and we'll go by here, but with this, you get a very disconnected student body. And so they're going to have to figure out how they're going to bridge the gap to create a much more robust, and they should be looking to get more and more of their students to live on campus, meaning near the university, to create more of a rich campus life, more of a true university type experience. And that's what Hyde Park and all of that need to do. And this attracts students to the university. This attracts students to the university. So you have to figure out how you're going to develop this undergrad experience for the freshmen and sophomores. Like, where can they go? Like a Dave & Buster's would be great for them. Truly, a Dave & Buster's by DePaul would be awesome. Because you can have, and you can use armbands, so you can have under 21 and above 21 hang out together. And if you give somebody a minor a drink, you can be arrested. In Dave & Buster's, security has to set protocols, but again, minors are not allowed to consume alcohol. But opening up a Dave & Buster's over here would be ingenious. Or the ping pong place, Spin, would be great right here by DePaul University. A Dave & Buster's, a Spin. This allows for under 21 to deal with 21-year-olds. So you can get freshmen in that going in, and not everybody's drinking alcohol. So those environments add into a mixed environment. These environments, they're strictly 21 and above. And that's how they're set up. So you have here on Webster. So you have this place right here is by on the backside. So is it quiet now? McGee's. So no more McGee's. So now it's quiet. Okay. And that's fine. So you're going to look for bringing in places like Spin and Dave & Buster's. And you could say even a Chuck E. Cheese. It would be a little bit modified, but a Chuck E. Cheese would work well here as well, because it has all the video games and pizza and that. And I go into Chuck E. Cheese and play the video games. It's not only for young kids. So Dave & Buster's, you can have your little kid birthday parties at Dave & Buster's. We didn't appeal to all the birthday parties and bar mitzvahs and bar mitzvahs, but Dave & Buster's could have done all of that, and it would have been really good experiences. But they didn't get into it in Chicago. But opening up a Dave & Buster's, a Chuck E. Cheese, a Spin would be incredibly good. So you're looking for that. Like, Dave & Buster's has virtual golf and many other things. So you have Glasgows over here. And so you have to figure out, and I'm going to go to the right, but again, I'm going to pull over here, let the Psycho Mooney Chicago drivers fly around. If you're on Tucson and around campus, the cops are trained by the Tucson PD, University cops, and no one speeds around campus. Around the University of Arizona, no one speeds. You get whacked so fast with a ticket, your head would spin. There's lots of people moving around on skateboards, on foot, on bicycles, and so on. There's lots of traffic. There's 55,000 people on campus. And that's student body. That's not including faculty and staff. So you're 70,000, and it's moving around campus. They don't allow people to speed, and they're very strict with their bike rules and everything else. And so, safety. And so around here, I don't get it. I would whack these people. This is still a school zone. You know, DePaul University is still a school zone. Do you know that? And you have to drive slower around the school zone. And so I would whack you with a ticket driving excessively around the school zone. Punish you even further. So they're going to have to figure out very attractive young ladies. That's awesome. Makes you want to go to school here. From the perspective of me as a male. And that's why when I did the spring fling and visited Arizona with my brother John in the spring, and the campus visit convinced me it was awesome and girls were beautiful. So it's not only going to school is where you make your social circles between men and women in college. And so a bunch of us used to, like Michelle Toten and a bunch of them used to live here on Fullerton by DePaul and that. And we used to hang out together. There was a bunch of University of Arizona students that graduated that lived here in Chicago. And we used to all hang out and move together, meaning hang out and go places together. Well, so again, building out the area, building out the student population. So again, building out the nightlife. Let's go up by Spin. And I'll show you where it is, but there's also no bowling alley over here. And we're talking the modern types of bowling. Like the Cosmic Bowl, it's far away from DePaul. And so it's by Logan, and it's far off campus. It's by Lane Tech High School. And the funny thing is, the Cosmic Bowl by Lane Tech, would be great for high school students to go there and hang out and do bowling and have bowling leagues. The UIC has a on-campus bowling alley. They need to renovate it and update it, but some of these bowling alleys could take it over for UIC, go in and take it over and renovate it and bring in food and, a much more plush environment at UIC, taking over the bowling alley. But they have no bowling alley here by DePaul University either. No movie theater, no bowling alley. No Dave and Buster's, no Spin, no Chuck and Cheese. You know, how are they building out campus life? And we'll go up this way and I'll show you how disconnected it is from the university. So it's a ways up and it's massively disconnected. Now, one of the things is that you have off-campus life that's on campus. The city of Chicago offers the upperclassmen a much richer off-campus life, but also the underclassmen. They get to go to Chicago Bulls games, Chicago Blackhawks games, going to, Chicago Bears games. They get to go to, we're talking just in Chicago. And then they have the Chicago Fire Soccer Stadium. So that's off-campus life. Plus they have Museum Park. They have Lake Michigan. And this is off-campus life for the students. DePaul is not too far from the beach, nor is IIT or UIC. So you can have a lot of great water recreation during the summer. That's one of the perks of being here, right? Going to school here. Like people like going to school at NYC because of all the off-campus choices. It's in a big city. You don't have as great an on-campus life, but DePaul off-campus life is, you have much more variety, like at New York University or Columbia's in New York as well. So you're going to have much more off-campus life because you're in a big city. So they have to emphasize that and figure out how they integrate that into student life. So we're going to go up here. Here's the AMC Theater. This is the closest big place to DePaul University. It's right down Sheffield, or right down Halstead. DePaul's on Sheffield and Halstead. So the north side is on Sheffield, and I should say the east side is on Sheffield, and east side. The west side's on Sheffield, the east side's on Halstead of the DePaul University. But it's right down the street, and you have the AMC here. So this is the closest theater to the university. But it's not that long. It's a 5-minute drive, a 10-minute, say 10 or 15-minute bicycle ride. Really, it isn't that far. But these are the things when students are and you're taking them around, what type of experience they're going to have. And here's a elementary school, I think. Noble. It was an elementary school, not a high school. But again, we're going to go up this way. And you're going to go by Russian Division and the Golden Triangle. And that's off campus. And that leads into a richer life for graduate students. That they have more sophisticated, nightlife in the Gold Coast. So for your graduate students, PhD students and that, they can have a more robust off-campus life. So again, they're going to have to figure this out with all these universities down here in Chicago, which there are numerous universities. Even Northwestern has all its grad schools. Basically, most of the grad schools in that, from medical school to Law School to other graduate, and Northwestern is downtown, and then the Gleacher Center from the University of Chicago, that's in Booth. They have all their part-time MBAs in that, and adult learning and everything at the Gleacher Center. So full-time MBAs are at Hyde Park, but part-time students, that's all the Gleacher Center. So truly, adult learning, part-time students, that's all the Gleacher Center. So if you're going to Booth and you're a part-time MBA, you go to the Gleacher Center, you don't go to Hyde Park. But again, there's Notre Dame, a graduate school down here. University of Illinois has its graduate school here in the city of Chicago. So there's lots of graduate school programs in the city of Chicago. National Louis is down here. And so you have numerous culinary programs. And so this is campus life. And the city and mayor of the city of Chicago doesn't think about that. It gets lost in that it's a big city, but a huge portion of the city is the educational base. And they feed into all these businesses like Google. You know, it's easy for them to do a lot of campus visits to Northwestern, University of Chicago, Illinois Institute of Technology, UIC, and have recruiters show up and offer internships because the student base is right there, so it's easier to recruit for their new 2,000, or they put 2,000 employees. Well, they're going to have a lot of internships. Ernst & Young does. They like to get the people in with them and get a feel for them to see if they're going to extend them a long-term offer. So they like internships. So you get to see if you're a fit for them, and they see if you're a fit for them. So you get to see if you like it, and they get to see if they like you. And if it's a match, you like them and they like you, well, then you have employment. But it's a good way to vet future employees by doing internships. Waltz Brothers, my family's business, should offer internships. Truly, internships, apprentice programs for people, because you need these things to see if there's going to be a future match. And so they're apprentices or interns, and so they get less pay. Truly, they get less pay, and it's less obligation to them, and they get to see if they're a match for you, or they get to see if you're a match for them, and you get to see if they're a match for you, the business. So internship programs are really good. So there's no formal arrangement. It's a short-term formal arrangement, and then you can part ways. Like if you're interning at Ernst & Young and it doesn't go right and you don't feel a fit, you can apply for an internship at Deloitte. And if that doesn't feel right, you can do an internship at KPMG. Truly. And so you're getting a feel for them, and they're getting a feel for you. So you don't have to do it at the same firm. You can move. You have 4 semesters of upper class, and you can do internships when you're, junior and senior years, or when you're in graduate school. You have 2 years of that, but still 4 semesters of graduate school. So you can do, internships. So don't think of just staying at one firm. see a bunch of different firms to see if you fit. And getting back to self-driving cars, it's very good for police in that if it can go fully autonomous, because they can prepare themselves before they get out of the car. Truly making sure they're gone and they have the right things to deal with, and they can look at the onboard computer and they can coordinate thoughts while the car takes them to the scene. So it should be for private security and law enforcement, it frees up them from focusing on the driving to focusing on the coming up engagement. When they're going to get out of the car, because the call, so they can prep if it's a domestic violence or, there's a bar fight or whatever. They have information on what's going on, and before they get up, they can prep and prepare for the engagement. So self-driving cars frees them up from doing that. And in the military, it's good too, because in a firefight, the driver also, through holes in the Humvee, can shoot as well. Like an armored car, they put the gun through the port and the side, and they can shoot out the side of the car. So the driver of the car can engage as well. It can go in self-driving mode, and the driver can also engage. So you have more guns on target. See, that's the wrong thing about the Humvee. It's not like an armored car where it has the gun ports. It needs to have the gun ports. And they're only one way. They don't open inward. They only open outward. So from the inside out, you can't push from the outside in. So don't worry, somebody's going to push it back and throw it. They can't. So, again, it allows them to engage. They can even put in the lower windshield for the driver a gun port too. There's 2 gun ports for the driver and passenger, the shotgun position. They have a front gun port that's at the bottom of the window and a side gun port, and they can stick their gun through and shoot. So you don't have to shoot through the window because it's bulletproof. It has a gun port, and you push the gun through the port, and you can shoot right in front of the vehicle in the Humvee. And if it's in self-driving mode, you stick the M16 through the gun port, and now you have both the driver and the passenger sticking it through the gun port that's at the bottom of the windshield in the Humvee, and both of them can shoot in front of them, besides if they have somebody in the turret. So it gives them more firepower, and so they need to do it like an armored car. And they have to design it, and the autonomous frees them up to engage. So they don't have to worry. Meaning they don't have to worry about driving. It's going to do things. And it's a different software. It's going to do evasive maneuvers, maneuvering around certain things. So it's a totally different software design than civilian driving. That's a whole different type of software that needs to be designed, because it has to program in to avoid incoming, fire. Like if there's a launch of a RPG or something, that the car will reposition itself to try to avoid the RPG. So that's a whole different type of self-driving. But it allows them to deal with issues, put more firepower, manpower on any particular issue because the car can take over and become autonomous. So it's good for police, and they have to have somewhat of the military thing. If there's a firefight in that the car knows what to do. And so that's where artificial intelligence comes in, and they have to have the ability to talk to the car like Kit in Knight Rider. It was voice commands, telling the car to go over there, or telling the car to go over there, or telling the Humvee to back up slowly, 1 mile an hour. So as they're retreating from a position, the Humvee, through autonomous driving, can slowly move itself backwards away from a position as they lay down cover fire as they withdraw. So it's totally different, and allows this ability for more physical action and more survival for the passengers. You know, the funny thing is, my dad's probably rolling over in his grave thinking about all these horrible taxi cab drivers, because they come from their country, and I'm sorry, but they drive like animals in their country. And then they come here and they pass the driving test, but they bring the disgusting pig fucking garbage from their own country here, and they shit all over America because they don't have proper etiquette. They don't have proper customs. And that's why all the taxi drivers, all these foreigners, they bring their driving perspective from their country here. And then we get all of them driving around, and then they got the earpiece in, and they're like, blah, 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 as you're a passenger in a car. I took my Uber. I talked to my mom once. Or she might have called. She called me, but I didn't call anyone. They're on their phone like blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, what world are you in? Because you should be focusing on driving, focusing on your passengers, not talking on your phone. So when I was driving Uber and Lyft and Via, I wasn't on any phone calls. Just like when I used to talk to Pete. When he was Ubering and Lyfting, only in between did we talk. When he got a fare, we hung up before he got the fare. Focusing on the passenger. So they come here and they bring over the garbage mentality, and it leads to a lot of issues. So we bring people over, and you have this custom clash. They have to assimilate to us, not us assimilate to them. We shouldn't have to put up with their garbage. Go back to your country. Just like as I'm a tourist, I've been a tourist in many different places. I assimilate. I follow their protocol for their habits, and I integrate with them, and I respect their culture. So when they come over, they have to respect. And they're like, oh, you're an asshole. Like this one movie, like, oh, talk English, you piece of shit. If you want to talk that, go back to your fucking country. You don't belong here. That's why the law says English in the workplace only. If you want to speak your language, then get the hell out of here. And we should only bring in from Ghana and other countries that already speak English, so when they go back to their native tongue, it's English anyways. So there's a lot of countries, like I met a lot of Ghanaians that applied for, residency in the United States. So Australia and many other places, they can just come. We don't take from the Middle East or any other country then, because they speak English in their home country, they'll speak only English here. So if they don't want to comply, you get rid of them. You cut it off. So you don't have this lost in translation. My ski instructor, he was from Australia, in Vail. He was Aussie. He speaks English. That's their native tongue. Singapore. Yeah, well, you're going to burn in hell. So that's good. Because if that's not truly you and you swear at me, you burn. It's blasphemy. And usually, but whatever. But I'm telling you, it's like other places. My friends went all over the place. Like my friend Mark, he spent years learning how to perfectly speak Japanese. He spent years studying the Japanese customs. From undergraduate through graduate school. Understanding the Japanese persona, understanding their customs. So when he worked for Hitachi, which he became their head counsel, he fit perfectly in with the Japanese mentality. He had to become one of them, not them becoming one of us. And Carol Chan, she's Chinese. She was born in America. She speaks English, but she went to school, graduate school in Spain. She worked in Latin America. She spent years and years learning Spanish culture, Latin American culture in particular. Truly. And she went over there and she integrated. I had friends in South Korea that did the same. And the Middle East, my friend studied for years Saudi Arabian culture, Arabic, Saudi Arabian culture, Arabic. And I talked to him when he was over there. But he understood the people when he lived in Riyadh and that. He studied the culture. He studied the people. He spoke the perfect language. And when he went in, he had no problems. He perfectly assimilated. He didn't offend anyone. He didn't know, oh, that's how you go in. He knew that men go in through this door. Women go in through this door in the office. He understood how it works in mosques. Not that he went to a mosque. But he understood Friday afternoons. They go to mosque. He understood the culture and everything. He prepared himself for years. We bring people in here and we just dump them on U.S. citizens. Here you go. Come into America and shit all over everybody here. But this is what happened in Germany. I studied the rise of the neo-Nazis, the skinheads, the Aryan Nation. And they were other white people. And they hated them. They were from Eastern Europe. They were fellow Germans. It was split by the wall. And they freaking hated their freaking guts. They didn't learn the culture. It was different in Western Europe than the Eastern Bloc. They had the nightclubs and everything. It caused unbelievable violence in Germany. There were lots of brawls, lots of unbelievable violence, white people on white people violence. Later came the flood of immigrants in from the Middle East, from Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, into Germany, because they were forced to take them, and they didn't get assimilated. But what did Jordan do with the Palestinians? They stuck them in a refugee camp and said, learn our country, learn our tendencies, learn our language, or fuck you and leave. Fuck off, mate. So if you want to come in, you come in peace and cooperation. You assimilate. And if you don't want to, get the hell out. And this is the problem we've had with blacks. They keep on saying, we're African Americans, African. Then I tell them, go back to fucking Africa. Get out. So it's a bunch of bullshit. And the problem is they fail to assimilate. And my partner David, he used to do tons of stuff with him and his wife in the black community. And they also taught English as a second language to Hispanics. She grew up in the ghetto in Malaysia. She understands, hey, it's tough. And I want to give you an opportunity. But if you're not going to take the opportunity, extending, the olive leaf, then get the fuck out. And this is the problem with this country. It shits all over its own people and allows people to come in and shit all over their life. They don't belong here. They need to comply. They need to change. They need to assimilate. And this is the same for any country in the world. It's the same as anyone immigrating into Mexico or Argentina or Venezuela. You don't want them coming in and shitting all over your way of life. And then all of a sudden, your citizens are evil and racist and discriminatory and they're doing hate crimes and you're locking them all up. Because that's what happened here in America. They locked up so many U.S. citizens, it's unfucking believable. Because they wouldn't assimilate. So the government has to stop screwing its own citizens. And I have a lot of immigrant friends. Tons of them. Danya and many others. And they come over and they assimilate. They learn the language. Here's a poor girl and she learns and speaks perfect English. She pays her bills on time. She learns the etiquette and everything else. She has great mannerisms. And I'm with her and I see, wow, she has no advantages. Just like Miss Park. What does she do? You listen to that speech. Perfect English. She grew up in North Korea. And yeah, you would say a richer North Korean. Okay. But that's nothing. That's at the bottom of the world's food chain. They were the poorest of the poor North Koreans. They were literally right there at the poorest people in the world. So when you say, well, that didn't get her shit. But when she went to Seoul, Korea, she had to learn the way, and she talks about it in her book, all these things, and she had to understand South Koreans and to assimilate. And then to come over to America, she further educated herself and assimilated. So I watch Miss Park, and I hold every other immigrant to her standard. I don't want these pieces of shit. So they can't come in and shit all over everything. Stop accommodating them. If they want, they assimilate fully, or you're fucking gone. So I talked from my friends who went all over the world, and they assimilated perfectly into those cultures, and none of them have ever had any issues. Now, Carol missed a train, thank God, when she was in Spain, and a terrorist blew up a train when she was going to grad school in Spain. I thank God she wasn't on that plane. And Scott, thank God he didn't get on the Lockerbie flight, because he was coming home from Syracuse University in London. He did a semester abroad at Syracuse University. He went to Syracuse, but they had a campus in London. And he didn't get on that plane. He could have, but he didn't. And thank God, because he's still alive, she's still alive. Other people, they all died. But I came down here for a spin. So I don't get this. And this is why we get people and they get bad experiences, and then they go and promote kill Americans. And you don't understand. This happens for people in every country around the world. It causes hatred and people wanting to kill people. And so they come in here, they don't assimilate, and this happens with the Boston bombers. The younger brother had a higher rate of assimilation and wasn't a terrorist. He was convinced by his older brother, who had a low rate of assimilation. He was having a hard time. He wasn't assimilating. Things weren't working out for him. But the younger brother had many friends and things were working out. He's still alive and you can talk to him. And all the articles I read, the older brother didn't fit in. And he didn't feel a kinship to the United States because he didn't assimilate. And so through that, he built up hostilities and hatred. And then he went overseas. And then he met a girl overseas as well. And further refused to assimilate. And this is why all the terrorist action in France. Originally, when French started taking in a lot of Muslims, and this goes way back as I watched that whole thing, initially, the Muslims integrated and they took a small amount in initially, and those initial Muslims learned the language, learned the French culture, and integrated. Then France opened it up, which they made a huge mistake. This goes back to the beginning of the 90s. I'm studying this and watching these migratory patterns. And then France decides they're going to open it up. And they get a flood of Muslims in. And those Muslims don't want to learn the French culture. They don't embrace the French lifestyle. And hence, there's a conflict between French people and them. My friend Victor, his girlfriend's family and girlfriend is from France. She's at Northwestern. She's a scientist. He goes to France to visit the family. Here, I just wanted to go by and off topic, spin right here. And this would be great by DePaul University. Unbelievable opening up it by DePaul University. They would love it. It would be awesome. right there, undergraduate, graduate, the House of Blues. But here I'm turning in because of the bowling alley. 10-pin. Again, that's perfect for a college campus. It's great by DePaul. There's no bowling alley. So they can open up another one there. I love the House of Blue in the foundation room. My friend Wendy used to bartend there. Another friend used to do gospel brunches on Sunday here at the House of Blue. They would do gospel music on Sunday and do a gospel brunch. I haven't talked to him. He's a black guy. We are good friends. We go way back in the club business together. And he used to run gospel brunches at the House of Blues Sunday. And they play all the gospel music. I like to go to a gospel brunch, pardon my English, but it would be a great experience. It plays all this high energy, black spiritual music. The gospel, they have a different way of expression. Their music is more dance, more vigorous. The Caucasians, it's more tranquil. So it's a different experience, and going to the gospel brunch on Sunday would be awesome. Harry Carey's by Wrigley Field, right? I mean, Harry Carey, Chicago White Sox, Wrigley Field. He got brought in by Vivek. I watched his whole career at Sox Park. He used to be in the bleachers. They don't have announcers in the bleachers. But the whole point with Vivek, he wanted to create this experience for the fans where they could interact with the announcer, Harry Carey. He would still do his play-by-play from the bleachers, and he would drink his Bud. He was a Bud man back then at Sox Park, and he was a Bud man in Chicago. But the thing that happened, here's Halstead Street, and got some places I don't know. Howling at the Moon's the one I know, the dueling piano. But again, he would do this, and when he got older, by the 7th inning in that, he started slurring his words and everything. He couldn't handle his liquor. You could tell that he was having some serious health issues because he started getting drunk faster and faster. And you go back and look at it, and basically, you can see that his ability to handle the liquor, his ability to process the liquor was depleting, and more of the toxicity was staying in his system, and hence he was having more and more cognitive issues. So he started off the game fine, and by the 7th inning, he started slurring things heavily. And so I don't know what his physician, but they should have told him, you need to change to 0 alcohol, Sharps or O'Dill's. One of those two are Budweisers. One's Miller Lite, one's Budweiser. So I think it's O'Dill's is Budweiser and Sharp is Miller Lite. But I could be wrong. It could be the other way around. I don't remember. But they could have got Harry Carey, could have been a Bud man on O'Dill's. Why couldn't they have switched Harry Carey? He'd probably be alive today. And a great ambassador for the Cubs, switching him to O'Dill's. And it would have been nice if Ron Santo was around. He lost both his legs, and then he lost his life to diabetes. And he always stood up for juvenile diabetes. That was big. Ron Santo was big supporter of juvenile diabetes. But again, shame on the Cubs. They have trainers and everything else, and they could have got him exercising and working with their trainers. He was an announcer for the Chicago Cubs. And they should have opened it up to the personal trainers, the dietitian, and everything else, like I see these coaches. They have all that for that. It's not only for the athlete, it's for the coaching staff as well, in that they have massage therapists and trainers and dietitians that can take care of them. So I don't understand that. It's different for the umpires, like in baseball and the referees. They have to get their own thing through the NFL. They have to do outside personal training. I'm talking for the people that directly work for the team, like the Chicago Sox. Like we had at Vanguard, we had our own internal gym. So even they were big on fitness. So again, it would have been nice if these people were still around and he could have still been a bud man on old duels. So they could have got Harry Carey off of the beer and moved him down, and that way the toxicity in his system would have been lower, truly, and easier for him to clear his system and detoxify and do the right thing. So, shame on Budweiser. Truly. And shame on the Cubs. And I could hear it because I listened to the games, and it was getting worse and worse. His wife is still around, and she runs Harry Carey's, and I've seen her several times on the news promoting the restaurant. I haven't seen her in a little bit. But again, she was a very good ambassador for Harry Carey's and a good ambassador for the Cubs. The Cubs should have a very big vested interest. I would tell the Ricketts they should be investing in Harry Carey's. The Cubs and Harry Carey, and I hate that Chip Carey went to the Atlanta Braves. If he was paired up with Steve Stone, I think they would have made an amazing team. Steve Stone and Chip Carey. And he stepped into his father's role, but ended up being an Atlanta Braves broadcaster, and he does a good job for the Braves. But it sucks that Chicago lost him. So, again, I'm trying to figure out what people are, how they're driving. But again, here's the Google coming in right next to the mayor's office. Do you think they have a real-time data board for the mayor of Chicago? And they can develop this, but a real-time board where he can see in front of the screen how many employees are working, where are they working in the city, truly. And he can see we have 27, 400 sanitation workers working. And he taps on it, and it shows 400 sanitation workers, 300 of them doing trash service, where they're active in the wards, and it shows the wards and the trash trucks, and he sees, okay, there's all the trash trucks moving through the different wards. He's managing his team, and that team is the municipal workers of the city of Chicago. And so he's looking to see, here's the different police precincts. Here's what's going on in the precincts. Here's what's going on with streets and sanitation. Here's what's going on with the water system and everything else. And things are right in front of him. And then he has all the department heads. Here's his list of all the aldermen. Truly, all the aldermen. And they can text message them on the right-hand side of the board. All the city aldermen can directly text the mayor. And it's on his screen. And he clicks on the alderman, in office, out of office. And then he can click through and see the aldermanic calendar. And he can schedule an appointment. Or send a note out to text message, goes right to the alderman's phone. And it says, want to set an appointment with you? Looks like you have Tuesday open. Let's block it off. Your office or mine. I like to go to the ward. So let's block off Tuesday, and I'm going to make a ward visit. I'm going to go to that aldermanic ward. And you can take me around and tell me what's going on within the ward. Because he's supposed to be reaching out to the aldermen and doing visits of each ward, and the aldermen are supposed to tell the mayor exactly what's going on. It doesn't matter if they're Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, Green Party. He makes a visit and he says, take me around. It's just like when the president flies around the country, like Obama came down here, he takes a tour with the House of Representatives candidate. I mean, not candidate, but representative. He takes a tour with the senator. He's in Chicago. I want to see your senatorial district. In Illinois, I want to see your senatorial district. I want to know what's going on within your senatorial district. There's 2 senators in the federal government, and I'm talking the president, and I forget how many House of Representatives, but he should be visiting with each of the senators and each of the House of Representatives, then the governor. That's it. The governor deals with the state Senate and the state House of Representatives. The president does not. Yeah, there's crosswalks, you moron. If you can't cross at the crosswalk, then you're a threat to yourself and you're a threat to everybody else. And you can't be on the street. So if you can't use the crosswalks, then you're a threat to yourself and you're a threat to everybody else. Because more likely somebody's going to hit you or you're going to run into somebody while it's moving, more than likely. Or a bicyclist is a... Bono, he got cut off. Somebody walking across the bike path. I think it was somebody walking. He went over the handlebars and broke both his wrists. They weren't supposed to be on the bike path. So pedestrians aren't supposed to be on the bike path. And pedestrians, the crosswalk sign here has to integrate with the bike sign. The bike sign and the drivers both have to stop for the pedestrian to walk across the crosswalk. If not, the bicycle runs into the pedestrian. And they get hurt. And the city gets sued. So that has to be integrated into the walk. The bicycle stops, but oh yeah, what if the bicycle blows the stoplight? In Tucson, the police give you a ticket and they take it deadly serious that bicycles must follow traffic laws. But you're spending all this infrastructure, and I have a problem with the bicyclists in the city. They don't follow any of the freaking laws. So it's like the wild, wild west down here. And it doesn't make living good. It makes it highly tension-filled and feeds into the violence. Because people don't have good days where they can decompress. Every day is a bad day. Truly, minor or major, but you're still having bad days. Even if it's a little bad, you don't have the ability to decompress. Like, wow, it's a few days in a row I haven't been harassed by tailgaters. And this has been ongoing for 10 years. all day, all night, constantly harassed by tailgaters. Whether I'm in the burbs or the city. I mean, when does it stop? When do they stop violating me? But getting back to it, the mayor is supposed to have the dashboard. Google can build this out for the president. A dashboard for him. Just like any CEO, where they can take a look and get the organization and see exactly what's going on. How many shipments are in process? How many shipments are out for delivery? How many shipments have been delivered? What is our billing? What is pending billing? How many bills have been delivered? How many bills are waiting to be received? How much money has been received today? He can watch the cash flow. And that's what the CFO is supposed to be making sure is going on. And so the CEO can see, okay, I need this. And he can see the CEO, Chief Operations Officer. And then he can talk to, okay, the Chief Future Officer, like at Google. The Chief Future Officer runs everything doing with enhancing their platform. Not what it is today. That's the Chief Operations Officer. He does all current operations, all current management, all current maintenance of the current systems. The Chief Future Officer meets with the Chief Operating Officer. And they're like, okay, we're going to do this transition. When it's ready to be transitioned, it changes off from the Chief Futures Officer staff and turns over to the Chief Operating Officers. It's no longer future, it's implemented. They're off on something else, the Chief Future Officer. It turns it over to the Chief Operating Officer. Now it's handing off to them, and it's their baby, and their staff gets reapplied to something else. So it's the same thing with the city of Chicago. Who is the Chief Future Officer? And who is the Chief Operational Officer? And this is part of the mayor's staff, the lieutenant mayor. There's a lieutenant governor, and there's, I think, a lieutenant mayor. We have a vice president. We don't call it a lieutenant. But he has his lieutenant. And then he has his alderman. And so the mayor can be in one area and the lieutenant mayor in another area. And the two of them working together get coverage. So maybe the mayor has to be out of office and is meeting with the governor, per se. Or he's out and meeting with the head of University of Illinois, Chicago, or Illinois Institute of Technology. The lieutenant mayor takes over the aldermanic meeting, the city council meeting. The lieutenant mayor sits in the mayor's seat and takes it over when the mayor has something that is more urgent, that he has to be out of chamber. And the lieutenant mayor sits in, taking over the daily business. So they're supposed to work together, but they need their chief operation officers, the chief future officer, their CIO, their chief information officer, that, runs the management information systems, the computer systems, making sure the census data is going in and is available, and he's all the data, the demographic information. The city of Chicago needs all the rental agreements. every landlord must file their renter's agreement with the city of Chicago. And the city of Chicago has to sign off on the renter's agreement. It's just like every insurance company in the state of Illinois has to have their platform approved by the state of Illinois to be emitted. So all the rental agreements, whether it's commercial or residential or mixed, you'll have commercial and residential, you have to submit those agreements. And the city must sign off on those agreements, making sure they're not violating any city ordinances, any city that includes zoning or other things, statutes. And they have to submit their process of how they go about renting their properties. Their process, their anti-discrimination process. And the city, we can't have it like before. If you're renting, whether Airbnb and that, you have to go through the city to be approved for an Airbnb license. You have to get an Airbnb license, and you need to be taxed like a hotel. You have to pay the hotel taxes. And you have to sign up to be Airbnb. You have to be approved not only by Airbnb, but you have to be approved by the city of Chicago. And they get hotel taxes, making it fair to hotels. That you can't operate like food trucks. They have to go through the same health inspections and everything else. Got to get a business license. They got to pay certain taxes and everything else. And since they don't pay property taxes, then they have to have a more expensive business license to make it fair for the restaurants, because they have to pay property tax. Yes, they have parking costs and that, but again, they deduct that and they figure it into how much more the food truck has to pay for a operating license. So it's fair to White Castle, who has to pay property tax. And yes, you have to assess the property on a different plane. It's a commercial property, and the city of Chicago assesses it not only on the property value, but the revenue of the business. Because that revenue goes into what? How much the property is worth, the rent roll. Just like the assessor does the rent roll for any building, that goes into the property value, determining the demand for the building, determining the demand for White Castle in that area. And so if you're not getting a lot of volume, you get a discount. And if you're getting a lot of volume, you have to pay more. That's fair. And you want your business, you're going to work hard to try to get it up, and you pay a little bit more in taxes. But that's the value of the property. And they have to make it fair that way. So they have to think about that. And this is outside of sales tax. This is tax revenue. So again, they have to set these things, and they're doing this to value the property, so it goes into the property tax. And if the business isn't doing well, then the property isn't making money, then they get a discount on the property tax. When a neighborhood is hot and the businesses are booming, property tax goes up. Those properties are worth a lot more money. And so the rent roll, meaning how much the business generates in revenue, has to go into the assessment of the property tax. Whether it's a commercial structure or anything like a storage shed. How much demand does that storage shed have? The more demand it has, the fuller it is, the more that property's worth. If they don't have a lot of units, then they get a discount on the property tax. That's fair assessment. Because what happens, valuation, when they go buy and value a property, the price of the property is driven by supply and demand. And so if a business is struggling, they get a discount. The landlord does, and they have to pass it on to the tenant. Truly, because if you're paying less in property tax, the landlord can't pocket it, and the tenant gets gouged, and the business fails. There has to be a relationship between, it has to pass through to the tenant. And the tenant is the one who gets the break, not the landlord. The landlord is making less payment. They're already getting the break, but that break has to be received by the tenant. And so the tenant gets a discount. Because the landlord doesn't have, so the landlord can't gouge the tenant. When they reevaluate the business based on revenue and the tenant is a renter, the landlord can't just stuff it in his pocket. It passes on through to the renter. And they're like, well, this year you're going to get a discount on your rent. Why? That prevents turnover and creates a more stable market. And that means you get more continuous flow into that area, and you can pay for sewers and infrastructure, maintaining the light systems and the street lights and the street cleaning and everything else. Because if the businesses fail, the properties turn over and the landlord loses anyways, because the infrastructure and everything degrades and the property becomes less valuable as well. So it has to pass along to the renter or leasee. It has to end up in their pocketbook, cutting their cost of business, giving them the ability to float, meaning to be able to make it when times get tougher. That when they do the revaluation, because the Department of Revenue sees the tax filings. And they also need to see all the purchase orders and that from the suppliers. And they have to cross-match purchase orders with so on, and they got to look at their spillage and their waste and that, and they have to go in and do inspections, because another way to do tax fraud, if you don't know it, you write off shrinkage. You say there's theft when there isn't theft. We got 6 cases of Miller Lite stolen. We write it off as a loss. We might not claim it on our insurance. A lot of times we didn't. We didn't claim that as theft. But they are like, oh yeah, we had 50 misorders. 50 misorders, we write that off on our business. When the kitchen makes an error and we scrap it, just like Walsh Brothers does, when a part is scrapped, we write it off as a loss. A restaurant, when somebody orders a meal and that meal is scrapped, meaning returned, you have to write it off. And if you give them a discount, that has to be recorded. And if you give them a comp, that has to be recorded, because that's a cost of business comps. And you get a tax break on that. You get to write it off, not as revenue, as loss. And so I got to know, as the city Department of Revenue, why the fuck did you write that off? And if I see a business writing off or comping a lot of meals, this is them could be doing fraudulent taxes, stealing. Truly, these are all ways for restaurants to steal and cook the books. Spill sheets. Like, yeah, we had 100 drinks spilled last month. Really? I caught my bartenders writing off comp drinks. They comped and they were writing on the spill sheet. I'm firing you. You stole from me. Oh, yeah. That was instant termination. I caught you writing off something as a spill, as a loss, that the customer knocked it over or something else. You know, somehow the bartender picked it up and threw it away. Truly, they threw away a customer's drink and they had to replace it. It went on the spill sheet. And they had to comp the drink. Well, this is another way to do tax fraud. There's a lot of ways to cook the books in restaurants. What do you think the mafia was huge into restaurants? As you see in James Gandolfini, and he has that restaurant that he's fleecing. He has the strip club. That shit is true. That's how they launder money, through these different entities. So you watch them in the show, and they're showing you, and this is true. I know for a fact it's true. And that's what they do. They launder the money. I know a lot of people that moved a lot of large amounts of cocaine, and they laundered the money through their restaurants, through their liquor establishments. And it looked like they didn't match the purchase orders. And all of a sudden the cash registers have a lot of sales. Tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in added sales that they didn't purchase any alcohol for. And they're like, well, there's no liquor purchased. Where are you getting it from? True. Or they run it through the cash register and all the liquor was never purchased, and they sold the liquor, but they got the liquor illegally. And so they sold a lot of stolen liquor or stolen meat, a lot of food truck heists. And they're selling the steaks and they report the sales and everything, but you don't see any vendor purchases. And they actually sold all those steaks, but it was stolen meat. They laundered the money through the business. And they show it, bringing in the cases of stolen booze into the restaurant. And then they sell all the beverages and they ring up the sales. And all the money is washed because the government, the IRS, Department of State, county and city, didn't check if they had any vendor purchases. And you have to look. Remember Bernie Madoff. The IRS should have busted him a long time before anyone else. You know that? He was committing tax fraud. Tax fraud. In the IRS, the cost of business is trading expense. I know this from Vanguard. We had accounts and we had paid clearinghouses to execute trades for us. And that was part of the fund fee. And they have tax returns, the trading house, the exchanges. And you have Bernie Madoff claiming things, trading costs and everything on his taxes. And then if you cross-check with the NYSE, he didn't make any trades. He's expensing trading costs, but the NYSE is not receiving any revenue. No revenue from Bernie Madoff. He's expensing trading costs, but the exchanges should be banking revenue from Bernie Madoff. Not so. The IRS failed. $50 billion Ponzi scam that should have been easily caught by the IRS, the Federal Department of Revenue. So the Internal Revenue Service, but it's the Department of Revenue, which I'll just call it that, the Federal Department. They should have caught Bernie Madoff from day one when he filed his first tax return. It was a Ponzi scam from the beginning. His business expenses didn't occur. How about his analytical data? Where was he getting it from? Because they have to show. You buy from Morningstar like we did. Or we buy from eMoney for our platform, for, to do our planning. Or ProGuard is another one. It's our planning software. MoneyGuard is another one. That's a planning software. I think there's ProGuard, MoneyGuard. eMoney is the one I used as our planning software. So and I have to expense that. And then where was his databases? There's trading software that he has to pay for that tracks the trading accounts. And so all of this shows up in the tax return, and then they cross-reference to the receivables from the trading software firm. This is why the federal government was supposed to be updating the IRS's computer systems so they can do these cross matches, these cross references, like they did with FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. Well, they cross match now with the tax returns. The information you put on the FAFSA, they cross match to the tax returns that are turned in. How many dependents you have, how much you made in income and everything else. And they cross-reference now. So Ponzi scams should be outed right away because they have to pay for all these systems and they have to make the actual trades. And so they're booking an expense, somebody else is booking a revenue. It's a matching system. So I don't understand what the F is going on with our government. Busting criminals should be as easy peasy. Because all you have to do is cross-reference. And you can catch all these money laundering and everything else. Like the bank deposits and that. Where are they coming from? And if somebody is making a deposit, that means they have a receivable. They have a receivable. That receivable was somebody else's expense, right? So it's a cross-matching. Receivable, you receive for giving a service. They expense the service. And so you can bust all these. And you can catch serial killers. Like I told you, the guy purchasing all the hydrochloric acid and then immense amount of drums in that. And you look at it, and we're talking about the vendors selling to an individual, and IRS looks like, why is this guy purchasing barrels full of hydrochloric acid and he doesn't have any business that uses hydrochloric acid? Why is he purchasing all these drums, hydrochloric acid, and all these drums, which he did, where he put the bodies. And like, this doesn't add up. And we're talking the State Department, the county, and the City Department of Revenue. Why are you having these expenditures? Because credit card companies submit their tax returns as well. And they look at where they get it. And the IRS has a legal right to look down where this money is going and where it is received from. They pay a bill, they charge up the credit, they expense these expenses, and they do. That's their lending to you. They're expensing this cost of capital. And then when you pay in, it's a receivable. They're booking the revenue. And so they should be busting these people. So forensic accounting, part of my Schaumburg Business Association, I used to interact with forensic accountants. And this is what's supposed to be happening, booking these softwares to unearth these people. How the hell are you buying these cars? Truly. And even if it's a barter system, they have to book it. Even in barter systems, you have to book the exchange because the expense is giving somebody a car. Other person has to book it as a receivable, receiving the car. So again, they should be triggering automatic investigations by the police. These things don't add up, and they pass it off, and it triggers them to do the physical investigation. And so they can go into the facility, into Near North for Budweiser and say, we need to see your receipts for this bar, your current receipts. We need to talk to your drivers that we don't have a match. And that's the First Amendment, what they said, that you're allowed to express your anger. So I just don't know how far it goes. Because you get me out of the shower and everything else off topic, and they need to inform people of what the limitations are. When somebody tells me that they already recognize me in a video, they're knocking on my door, they entered my building, they're taking me out, and I got to go get my physical ID now? But you said you're knocking on my door, you saw the video, you already identified. Why do I got to get out of my house, put on my stuff, go down to my car, stand outside, and show you my freaking ID? And that's why I was so upset. Like, I didn't get a call from my landlord telling him, yes, there are some police about to come over and need to discuss an altercation on the property. It would have been nice of them to give me a heads up. But I didn't, and all of a sudden I get this, and then they're like, oh, I'm like, how did you find my apartment? Oh, we saw the video. Okay, then they asked me who I am, Michael Olson. You've identified me through the video. That means you pulled me up on my driver's license or state ID card, and it has a picture of me, which you should be able to pull up on your phone because the onboard computer should integrate with their phone. What they see on the onboard computer should be able to be seen on their phone. And they're like, yeah, I have your picture right here, and they can facial match you right there with the camera on the phone. And the camera can say, facial match, confirmation. So that integrates, and they're like, here, we have to take a scan of your face to facial match you. Or we need your biometric, put your thumbprint here to identify you. But it should be on their phone. Their phone should be integrated to their computer and to their body camera. They can go over footage. They can alter the footage, but they can look back with their body camera and be like, okay, we want to do a training. And the commander can see all the footage and like, we're going to call you in. We're going to go over your body camera. And we're going to go over these altercations. Just like they did at Vanguard when I had phone calls. They call us in and they go over the phone calls with my manager. And she would have everything. She reviewed them all and we go over and she said, okay, why did you say this? The client responded. Then you responded here. What did you do here? I pulled up this web page. Now, it would have been nice if it was integrated with my computer so she could have seen the screens that I was going through and what I was doing with my cursor and everything and what I was clicking on and so on. And so we can go over the video and the audio simultaneously, and she can stop and, okay, you put your cursor here, you click this open, but you should have went over here and opened up this on dividends. Instead, because the client said this, you should have went to here, not over here. Okay. And we need to note that, and you need to educate yourself better. And here you go, you can read this. And we need to know, clients called up, did that fund go, how many shares did it have, and did those shares go ex-dividend? Because it affects the fund if the shares paid out in capital gains. Oh, yes, in capital gains. So we have people calling us up, how many of the shares went ex-dividend? Some shares in a growth fund, they don't pay dividends. But some in a growth fund still pay a dividend. So you'll have a mixture of funds going ex-dividend and not. And then what are your positions? Because if you hold value stocks, some value stocks pay a higher dividend per share than other value stocks. And how many shares of that depends on how much capital gains you're getting. And people want to know, did they declare? Okay, here's the declared, here's when it's received, and there's a transition between declaring and receiving. But this affects the stock price. This affects the fund's capital gains when it's a receivable to when it's received, constructive receipt. It is a pending receivable. When they receive the money, it is constructive receipt and it is booked as revenue. So it matters. So we used to have this when you're analyzing, you have to understand what, so something, you have a fund and it's a growth fund and there's no dividend shares. When things go ex-dividend, you don't care because your fund doesn't have any dividend companies. So it does matter if it pays a dividend or it doesn't pay a dividend. And it matters how much of a dividend it pays. What type of cash flow is coming in, and that affects you as a shareholder. We used to have funds that paid out no dividends, that truly held the dividends. They were tax-efficient funds, and they rarely ever paid out a capital gain. The point of investing is reflected in the share price because it's reflected in the asset value of the fund. But it doesn't pay it out. It just you get appreciation, not dividends. It reflects in appreciation. And these are tax-efficient funds at Vanguard. So it was our counter to annuities. our counter to annuities were tax-efficient funds. And this was long before we had ETFs, which are tax-efficient. But ETFs are for people to day trade. You invest in ETFs to day trade. If you're not day trading, then you invest in regular mutual funds. There's no reason to own an ETF if you're not moving it around. So when you're holding a portfolio, and if you're a fund manager, I don't need to hold an ETF. Truly, I'd rather hold a tax-efficient fund like Vanguard has. It's a mutual fund. It's a non-ETF. It's a traditional, but it defers capital gains. You get it through. It's a tax-efficient fund. And then you have ones that pay out dividends, and you're deciding how much cash flow you're getting when you're managing a portfolio. But also you have to understand, people hold ETFs when ETFs aren't the right funds to hold in an account if you're managing a portfolio. Everybody thinks you only hold ETFs if you are trading. If you're not making trading moves, then why pay for an ETF? You don't need an ETF. You hold a traditional mutual fund, a regular open-ended, tax-efficient mutual fund, or if you want more gain on a regular basis, you don't need a tax-efficient mutual fund. You just hold an open-ended mutual fund. And then there's closed-ended funds. And you got to understand how these funds operate to design portfolios. So I look at these portfolio managers and like, okay, but they don't take in these considerations. And I can go into names, but they don't really take into these considerations. It's much more complicated. I never saw this in the CFA. They teach you how to be an analyst, not necessarily how to make a winning portfolio. That's why they call it certified financial analyst, or chartered financial analyst, I should say. It's certified financial planner, chartered financial analyst. You're an analyst. That's what you learn. You're not learning to build portfolios. You're learning to analyze. I'm better than any CFA, any fund manager. But somehow they get the big money and I don't get shit. And by the way, I'm by the Langdon Hotel, which is over here. And they mentioned on the news, let's see if I can get that in there. No. But anyways, that's the Langdon Hotel across the street. And they said it won awards. I forgot what awards, but they said it won awards for being an outstanding hotel. Awesome. So props to them. I wish I could remember what awards, but again, they said it got recognized as one of the best hotels in the city of Chicago. Outstanding hotels. So that's awesome. But again, you have to understand things much more deeply. So when you get out of a CFA, you pass level 3, you got your chartered financial, you're still wet behind the ears. You really don't know what the hell you're talking about. And Tom King, he doesn't manage portfolios. I manage portfolios. He didn't manage portfolios. He is a CFA, but he's not a portfolio manager. So when you're listening to him, he's talking from a layman's term when you're talking about portfolio management. He's more talking from an analyst side, but there's a lot more. In Vanguard, when we made a trade, we do over 100 and something different calculations figuring out how it's going to affect the portfolio. It's not only analyzing the stock, it's analyzing its effect within the portfolio. And when things need to be reweighted and not. And so we take incoming cash flow and we use that, or sometimes it's better to place the incoming cash flow on a new purchase and to sell off an existing position because we want to exit. Like the S&P 500, how often does it get reweighted? And so they reweight the S&P 500, and these different indexes get reweighted, and that affects their holdings, and you have to reposition your portfolio. The Vanguard S&P 500 has to change its weightings. But we don't do it simultaneously with the reweighting of the S&P. We time, so we don't just dump off our positions. We use them to do loss capture and other things, and we slowly transition. So they transition and they make the decision. It's a virtual portfolio. They're holding nothing. They're not buying and selling nothing with that. The index, they hold nothing. They're just making a paper change and saying the S&P 500 now has 20% Google or whatever. There's no trading cost in the index. That's not, they're just the template. They don't experience any of the movement costs. We experience the movement costs, so we make a lot of decisions of when we're going to exit these positions and when we're going to inquire. So we're not going to be lockstep with the S&P 500. Do you know that? There's a lag, and Fidelity Spartan does it a little different than we do it, and there's a lag. It's not we're going to just dump our shares on the market. There's a lot, and you hedge in the portfolio with options. Because if somebody is getting de-weighted, their stock takes a hit because you're selling off. The option with a put, you make money. And so they don't do that on the index. That's just, Standards and Poor's, it's a paper transaction. But you're making money by positioning with puts and calls when you have to reweight the portfolio. And so you're looking at the timing and when they're going to, and you're figuring out what they're going to do. Oh yeah, you're looking and predicting what they're going to do. Are they going to devalue this? Are they going to devalue that? Unlike the Fed announcement, you're waiting for the S&P 500 to announce the new weighting of the S&P 500. And this happens for every index. And you're waiting for their announcement of how they're going to change the weighting. So you have several, it doesn't matter what index. And then you can buy puts and calls, because the ones that getting added to is going to go up, and I'll buy call options on that and make an extra bang. And the ones that are getting delisted, they're going to go down, and I'm going to make money with my puts. And if I can predict this, what they're going to do, and if I can match their insight in advance, then I can position before the market is aware, and so I can buy them cheaper, and I get deeper in the money positions. So it's very sophisticated. So when you listen to Bloomberg and Tom Keene and them, they're not portfolio managers. He hasn't had the rubber hit the road for decades. So it's totally different. He is an analyst more. And he's giving you from the analyst point of view. So none of those people are managing portfolios. So when the portfolio managers come on, they have a little different insight than the people at Bloomberg have. But they don't tell you what calculations they're doing, and we didn't tell anyone. We just told people we made about 100 and something different types of analytical calculations when we're repositioning the portfolio, and it takes time to make those, and we make trades and reweights so we don't reflect the S&P 500 perfectly when there's a change in the weighting. And it matters. And then there's the cash flow in and out, and again, that affects how the fund does. Your receivables to your payables. So again, it affects. And if we have to sell off positions, we might be temporarily underweighted. If we have more redemptions than we have more inflows, then we have to take money out of the fund by cashing in shares. And that changes the weighting of the fund, and it doesn't match the S&P 500. So the fund is more dynamic than the S&P, and this is why it over or underperforms the S&P 500. And the ones that manage better outperform, and that's why Vanguard's S&P 500, even with an expense, can outperform the S&P 500. You should be outperforming the index. And if you're not outperforming, that means when the index loses money, you lose less downside capture. And when the index is doing well, you have more upside capture. So you should be outperforming the index all the time. If you're the Fidelity Spartan Fund, as an example, you should be making more than the S&P 500, and when it's losing, you're losing less than the S&P 500 if it has a negative year. So you should always be outperforming, and that means whether it's losing, you're losing less, and when it's making, you're making more. That's a good index manager. So, and that's how you value an index, and that's how we did it at Vanguard. We always wanted to beat the index, never match the index. We always wanted to have alpha. And alpha means we made more return than the index. The index makes that return. When you make more than the index, you have alpha. When you have less performance than the index, you have negative alpha. That means you suck. And it truly means you suck. So you have to understand these things are a lot more complicated. And so I still get very frustrated and have so much anger in me. It's unbelievable of where I should be compared to all these other pieces of garbage. And then I get people harassing me, treating me like shit, and they're garbage. Like him, riding in the street. Where's the bike? Right? You say, do the bikes stay to the right? In Tucson, you would get a ticket because they have bike lanes. Only when you go in the turn lane and the car doesn't pull up next to you, it stays behind you. But in the traffic lanes, if you're in a traffic lane in Tucson, you get a ticket. See? The biker just blew the red light. So the biker wants all the graces from the car and to be treated like a car. But when it doesn't want to, it can blow the light and act as it's, not like a vehicle. And in Tucson, the police don't treat it like that. They treat it as a fully moving vehicle. And they give them comparable tickets. Like, here you go. That's a $500 fine for blowing a red light. They don't treat it. It's a moving vehicle. You're on a skateboard. They treat a skateboarder the same thing. I don't care if you're on a unicycle. They treat it as a moving vehicle. And you blow that light, you get that ticket. You're not a pedestrian. You're driving a moving vehicle. So the police here in Chicago ignore. In Tucson, they bust you. You'll hear the lights. Woo! Bicyclists, pull over. And if you don't, well, that's resisting. And it just gets worse for you. But they roll them for bicyclists. Woo! Pull the bike over now. Or pull the skateboard over now. Or pull the scooter over. Or pull the unicycle over now. You're not a pedestrian. You're driving a moving vehicle. And with that, there's responsibility. Different types of protocol. A skateboard can go really fast on a sidewalk, and somebody coming out the door, a pedestrian, has no time to react because it's moving faster than even a jogger. And so it causes serious problems. And everybody treats it like, nah, it's no big deal. It's just a skateboarder. Well, I can tell you people have died. Like at the University of Arizona, when the skateboarder and the bicyclist crossed paths. So people die. So they don't take it as a game. If you're not going to be responsible, then you shouldn't have it. That's like going out and drinking. You need to be a responsible drinker. And in countries that don't have a lot of problems, they teach early that you have to be a responsible drinker. And if you can't be a responsible drinker, then you can't drink. You have a problem. I don't drink. But I was still an damn responsible drinker. But I could have been a lot better. Truly. And when you can't handle things and don't do things right, then you can't do them. So it's different. We have responsibility to protect each other. And if you can't drive your tow truck correctly, then we take away your CDL. You don't get to drive how you want. You either follow the law or we yank the CDL. So you're not in a speed race. This is not the Indianapolis 500. I'm coming up to a stop sign. So you just blew a stop sign. You can't do a rolling stop. That's a rolling stop. You have to maintain for at least a second. Full stop for 1 second. If not, you can't just slow down and then let off the brake and go. That's a rolling stop and it's illegal. The vehicle must come to a complete and full stop. Anything less, you get a ticket. You blew the stop sign. You did a rolling stop. You blew the stop sign. I got pulled over once in Deerfield for doing that. Not coming to a complete stop. An officer said, and I said, but officer, I made a stop. He said, no, you didn't. I'm like, well, yeah. He's like, no, you didn't. And he's like, you need to come to a complete stop. You did a rolling stop. That means the car didn't stop 100%. It needs to be non-moving. No momentum going forward. Perfect stop. At least 1 second. And then you can proceed. But you must make a full and complete. The trash truck just rolled the stop sign. So we don't get people following the law, and God watches. You made these laws, you enforce these laws, and you catch the scumbags. So you should be giving this waste management driver a ticket for blowing the stop sign. And he's driving a trash truck. He has a higher requirement as a commercial driver driving a 10,000, 20,000, or whatever truck that can do severe damage even with a minor bump. So I don't get this shit. And it drives me up the freaking wall that these people get away with it and you take everything away from me. And you beat on me, you beat me, you curse me, you belittle me. I sleep in nothing, I have nothing. You take away my health, you take away and desecrate my body parts. You threaten me every day with your vehicles. You threaten my life every single fucking day. Numerous times every day. And you just walk away. And I live in shit like this. And I get fired in all my business. And I had to rebuild my business after the first breakdown. They took it away from me. I was forced out. And then I had to get my securities licenses again and go through everything and build my business again. And then they took it away again. Illegally. They did the first time and they did the second time. Both illegal. And they just get to walk. And I get to live in incredible poverty. And they get to act like they're good people. They're pieces of dirty, disgusting, fucking filth. And they are. And they're like, oh, I'm a good law-abiding citizen. No, you're not. You break like 20, 50, 100 laws every freaking day. You're not a law-abiding citizen. Shut the fuck up. You jaywalk, you litter, you blow stop signs, you do so many crimes, it's unbelievable. And then you're like, I'm a complying citizen. You cheat on your taxes, you cheat on this, you cheat on that. And you preach that you're good. You're a filthy, disgusting piece of living fucking shit. You lie. You deceive. You're garbage. So it's funny how you put me down and none of you can stand up to me in any way, shape, or form. You're fucking putrid, disgusting fucks. And you don't know your place. That's why I warned the police. Come near me and die forever. You're a putrid, disgusting, fucking piece of fucking shit. And you're going to discipline me? I watched all these cop cars all the time in Deerfield, all over, breaking the law, not complying. It's unbelievable. And then somehow you open your mouth to me. They should beat the living shit out of you. And I really do mean they should kick the fucking shit out of you. Like here, this fucking piece of shit goes around me and cuts in line. I'll go somewhere else where they might respect the law. Like this is illegal by insurance. You can't, that's not a walk-up window. Read your liability insurance. That's not a walk-up window. You see a bank? Go to a bank. They have a drive-through, and then they have a separate walk-up window. They don't accept walk-ups in the drive-through, and they tell you that. Walk-ups not allowed. Get a walk-up window. They do at the gas station. Here, I'll go show you at the gas station up here a walk-up window. We have these at banks. We have a drive-through teller window and we have a walk-up window. They're not the same. And if somebody walked up to us at the drive-through, we tell them, if the inside was open, go inside, or if not, go up to the walk-up window. This is drive-through only. We cannot accept any walk-ups. It's not a walk-up window. So again, pieces of garbage, pieces of filth, disgust, and disgrace. Oh, Lord, don't let me abuse your grace. I've always said that. They don't give a shit. They're like, God will forgive me for everything. It doesn't matter. I'll just go and abuse his grace. What do they say in holy water? Lord, don't let me abuse your grace. I'll only use it by accident and ask you to forgive me for my transgressions that I've done from my negligence, by accident. Not in purpose. And I told you in the Bible, look it up, but purpose negligence, they're very hard to get any grace. Oh, you think all sin is equal? It is not. So, intentional sins, as it tells you, is very hard to be forgiven. Accidental sins, you can get grace. Like if you have temporary anger, like temporary insanity, God knows if it's true, and you strike out and do something that you wouldn't otherwise do, you can receive grace. If you've done all your calculations and you made an accident and somebody dies, you can receive grace. You didn't willingly do it. It was an oversight. You didn't try to kill them. You didn't intentionally neglect something. You made a mistake. Not a willing mistake at all. And unintentional. But when you neglect, like the oil platform, Deepform Horizon, and you neglect, you willfully know, and you neglect, then those things are almost impossible. You're more than likely destined for eternal damnation. Those things aren't really forgiven. So El Chapo, there is no way. That's why I point out how Paul how Paul killed people. You have to look at King David and Paul and others, and when they killed people, and what the protocol was, and why they were eligible for grace. So when you're a serial killer, you're destined for eternal damnation. But a priest saying, oh, God will forgive you. No, he won't. So anyone telling you that, it is untrue. Those are sins that are almost impossible to be forgiven. And literally, if you repeated it, it's impossible. So these aren't people of God, and God watches. You don't try to get it right. And so it's a joke. You are not people of God. Seeking excellence is people of God. Me and Jennifer, Kim, my ex, we had this discussion all the time. It was just understood in our nature that this is what God commands. This is what God expects. And so, yes, you might fall short, and you will, but that is foreseen. But that is an intentional sabotage. Like here, doing things intentionally means willful neglect. Those sins are very hard to forgive. So you think all sin is equal. If I run a light and I didn't see it, or I jaywalk and somehow I was ignorant of it because I was caught up in my phone or something else, those are forgiven. Or, truly, it wasn't intentional, it was an oversight, but you're supposed to learn from your mistakes. This is why grace is given. Do you understand that? This is why God allows atonement and repentance. So you can make these mistakes, these errors, and learn. So God knows. But when you do things intentionally, those are very hard to forgive. And most of the time, if you've done them repeatedly, they're not forgivable. You might end up perishing if they're not extreme, but there is no hell way you're going to heaven. Just to let you know, it's impossible. So, heaven is the hardest thing to make. And so, you have to understand. You think it's some easy peasy thing. It's not. What did Jesus die on the cross, making it him? I'm talking him and the disciples. Do you see the error Judas made? He was with them, and he never repented, but he still did lots of good works with them. Oh, Judas did an incredible amount of good works. He was right there helping and doing good things. But he still burned in hell. So, I don't know who's teaching you the Bible, but you're seriously misunderstanding the Bible. And you're misunderstanding sin. And you keep on thinking you're going to get away with it. When you die, I wouldn't want to be in your shoes. I like my shoes. No matter what you do to me, I am firmly planted in connection with God. I'm going. I don't know about you, but most of you I see, and you're fucked. and you got wrong guidance.